The distant sound of hooves pounding against dry earth was the only warning Hannah Kinsley had before 4 riders appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the blazing orange sunset of the Arizona Territory. She clutched her daughter Lily closer to her side as they stood on the porch of their small homestead, squinting into the fading light of that fateful summer evening in 1876. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. 4 years alone on this land had taught her that unexpected visitors rarely brought good news, especially with her husband Thomas 3 days in the ground, buried beneath the cottonwood tree that offered the only shade for a mile in any direction. "Mama, who are they?" Lily asked, her small fingers digging into Hannah's worn cotton skirt. "I don't know, sweetheart," Hannah whispered, one hand moving instinctively to the rifle propped against the doorframe. "But stay close to me." The riders slowed as they approached, and Hannah's grip tightened on her daughter's shoulder. The lead rider, a broad-shouldered man with a dust-covered hat pulled low, raised his hand in greeting rather than reaching for his holster, a small mercy that did little to ease her suspicion. "Evening, madam," he called out, his voice carrying across the yard as he brought his horse to a stop a respectful distance from the porch. "Adam Callaghan's the name. These are my brothers. We're looking for shelter for the night if you'd be so kind, happy to pay for the trouble." Hannah studied him carefully. His face was weathered but honest-looking, with a strong jaw partially hidden beneath a short beard streaked with trail dust. His clothes were worn but well kept, and though he carried a gun like any sensible man in these parts, there was something in his demeanor that didn't scream danger. "My husband's not here," she said firmly, a half-truth that felt safer than admitting she was a widow alone with a child. Adam Callaghan removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and respectful blue eyes. "We don't mean to impose, madam. We've been driving cattle north and got separated from our main group in that dust storm yesterday. Just need a place to water our horses and maybe sleep in your barn if you've got one. We'll be gone by first light." Before Hannah could respond, a movement near the cattle pen caught her attention. 3 men on horseback, definitely not with Callaghan's group, were approaching from the east, men she recognized with a chill of dread. Jasper Willis and his sons, who'd been pressuring her to sell the land since Thomas took ill. "Mr. Callaghan," she said quickly, her voice dropping, "I believe I may require your assistance more than you require mine." Adam's eyes followed her gaze, his expression hardening as he assessed the approaching men. With a subtle nod to his brothers, he dismounted in one fluid motion. "Trouble." "Jasper Willis," Hannah explained tersely. "He's been trying to take my land since my husband fell ill. Now that Thomas is gone, he thinks I'll have no choice but to sell." Adam's jaw tightened. "Madam, I don't make a habit of involving myself in other folks' business, but I surely don't approve of men who pressure widows." He glanced down at Lily, who was watching him with wide, wary eyes. "Don't worry, little miss. No harm will come to you or your mama while we're here." Hannah nodded gratefully, though caution still tempered her relief. Mr. Willis doesn't take kindly to being denied. He can be persistent. As Willis and his sons approached, Adam positioned himself casually at the bottom of the porch steps, his brothers spreading out behind him in a formation that wasn't openly threatening but made their presence unmistakable. "Evening, Mrs. Kinsley," Jasper Willis called out, his thin lips stretched in what passed for a smile. "Thought I'd stop by and see if you'd reconsidered my offer." His gaze shifted to Adam and hardened. "Didn't know you had company." "Just passing through," Adam replied evenly. "Mrs. Kinsley was kind enough to offer us water for our horses." Willis's eyes narrowed. "This here's private business between Mrs. Kinsley and myself." "Is that so?" Adam's tone remained conversational, but Hannah didn't miss how his hand rested near his holster. "The lady doesn't seem interested in conducting business this evening." Willis's face reddened beneath his weathered tan. "You'd best move along, stranger. This ain't your concern." "Mr. Willis," Hannah spoke up, drawing strength from Adam's steady presence. I told you yesterday and the day before that. This land isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. This is my daughter's inheritance from her father, and we're staying." Willis spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. "A woman can't run this place alone, and you know it. You'll be desperate come winter, and my offer won't be so generous then." Adam took a step forward. "Seems to me the lady's made her position clear. Perhaps you gentlemen should respect that and be on your way." The tension stretched between them like an overwound fiddle string. Hannah held her breath, one arm wrapped protectively around Lily, the other still within reach of her rifle. Finally, Willis jerked his head at his sons. "We'll be back, Mrs. Kinsley. You can count on that." He shot a venomous look at Adam. "And you'd best be long gone when we do." As the three men rode away, Hannah's knees nearly buckled with relief. Lily, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, looked up at Adam with a mixture of curiosity and cautious hope, something Hannah hadn't seen in her daughter's eyes since before Thomas took ill. "Thank you, Mr. Callaghan," Hannah said softly, still keeping a proper distance. "Just Adam, please, madam." He returned his hat to his head with a small nod. And it was no trouble. Men like that understand only one thing: that someone might stand in their way. "They'll be back," Hannah said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Adam looked out toward the horizon where Willis and his sons had disappeared, then back to Hannah and Lily. Something in his expression shifted, a decision forming behind those clear blue eyes. "Mrs. Kinsley, I don't mean to presume, but my brothers and I were heading north to deliver cattle. We lost half our herd in that storm, and our buyer won't be interested in what's left." He hesitated. "If you'd be willing to let us camp on your land for a few days, we could help with whatever needs doing around here. Might discourage Mr. Willis from making good on his promise too soon." Hannah hesitated, years of caution warring with desperate practicality. The barn roof needed patching before the summer rains came. The fence around the vegetable garden was falling apart. The well pump was sticking more often than not. All tasks Thomas had planned to handle before the consumption took him. "Why would you offer such a thing to strangers?" she asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. Adam's smile was gentle. "My ma raised me to believe we're put on this earth to help each other through the hard times. Seems to me you're facing some hard times, Mrs. Kinsley." Hannah studied him for a long moment, weighing risk against need. Finally, it was Lily who broke the silence. "Can they stay, Mama?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. "Mr. Adam scared the bad men away." Hannah looked down at her daughter, then back at Adam Callaghan and his patiently waiting brothers. "You can camp by the creek," she decided, "and I'll provide supper in exchange for help with the barn roof tomorrow." Adam's smile widened, crinkling the corners of his eyes in a way that made him look younger, less weathered by the trail. "That's more than fair, Mrs. Kinsley. We're much obliged." As the men led their horses toward the creek, Hannah watched them go, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake or found unexpected salvation in the form of 4 dusty cowboys. "I like his eyes, Mama," Lily whispered, still watching Adam. "They're kind like Papa's were." Hannah squeezed her daughter's shoulder, unsure how to respond to the first positive comparison to Thomas that Lily had made since his passing. "We'll see, sweetheart, we'll see." The following morning arrived with the harsh clarity of high desert sunlight. Hannah rose before dawn, as was her habit, to kindle the stove fire and begin breakfast preparations. The familiar routine helped settle her nerves about their unexpected guests, though she still kept the rifle within easy reach as she worked. A soft knock at the door startled her. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened it to find Adam standing respectfully on the porch, hat in hand, looking freshly washed despite their rustic accommodations by the creek. "Good morning, Mrs. Kinsley," he said, his voice low as if mindful of the early hour. "Hope I'm not disturbing you. My brothers and I were wondering if there might be some coffee to spare before we get started on that roof." Hannah nodded, stepping back to allow him entry into the kitchen. "I was just brewing a pot, and please call me Hannah. Mrs. Kinsley makes me feel like my mother-in-law." A smile touched Adam's lips as he ducked his head to enter the modest cabin. Hannah, then. He settled his hat on a peg by the door, revealing damp hair that suggested he'd dunked his head in the creek before coming to her door. "Your brothers are early risers," she commented, pouring the steaming coffee into a tin mug. "Habit from the trail," Adam replied, accepting the mug with a grateful nod. "Can't afford to waste daylight when you're moving cattle." He took a careful sip. "This is mighty fine coffee, Ma Hannah." She busied herself with the biscuit dough, uncomfortable with the way her name sounded in his deep voice. "How many cattle did you lose in the storm?" "Nearly 30 head," he answered, his expression clouding. "Got scattered in the dust and darkness. We managed to recover some, but not enough to make the contract worthwhile." "I'm sorry to hear that." Adam shrugged, leaning against the doorframe with casual ease that somehow didn't feel presumptuous. "That's ranching. Good years and bad, we'll recover." Hannah glanced toward the small bedroom where Lily still slept. "Your brothers. They're good men," understanding flashed in Adam's eyes. "Yes, madam. My brothers are decent folk. Daniel's the oldest at 32, married with 2 little ones back home in Texas. Matthew's 28, a bit rough around the edges but solid as they come. And Jacob's the youngest at 24, smart as a whip but quiet. None would ever harm a woman or child." Relief loosened the knot in Hannah's chest. At 26 herself, with a 6-year-old daughter, she'd learned to be wary of men's intentions, especially those passing through with no ties to the community. "And you, Mr. Callaghan, what's your story?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider its propriety. "Adam," he corrected gently. "I'm 30, never married, been running cattle with my brothers since our pa died 10 years back." He paused, taking another sip of coffee. "No exciting tales to tell, I'm afraid, just honest work and miles of trail dust." There was something in his steady gaze that made Hannah believe him, though she'd learned the hard way that honest faces sometimes hid dishonest hearts. "Mama," Lily's sleepy voice preceded her appearance in the kitchen doorway, her dark hair tousled from sleep. She rubbed her eyes, then noticed Adam and froze. "Good morning, Miss Lily," Adam said, crouching down to her level with a respectful distance between them. "I hope we didn't wake you with our talking." Lily shook her head, studying him with the frank curiosity of childhood. "Are you fixing our roof today?" "Yes, madam, that's the plan. My brothers and I are going to patch it up good and solid so you and your mama stay dry when the rains come." Lily nodded seriously. "Papa was going to fix it, but then he got sick." Hannah felt her chest tighten at the mention of Thomas, but Adam handled the moment with surprising grace. "Your papa sounds like a good man who took care of his family," he said simply. "I'm sure he'd be mighty proud of how brave you and your mama are being." Lily considered this, then asked, "Do you have a little girl?" "Lily," Hannah chided gently, but Adam just smiled. "No, I don't have any children of my own, but I have a niece about your age back in Texas. Her name is Emma." "Does she have a mama and papa?" "She does. My brother Daniel is her papa, and her mama's name is Sarah." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "You can have a biscuit when mama makes them," she declared, as if granting a royal favor. Adam's face broke into a genuine smile. "That's mighty generous of you, Miss Lily." "I do love a good biscuit." Hannah watched this exchange with a mixture of caution and something warmer she couldn't quite name. Thomas had been gone only a week, yet here was this stranger, somehow coaxing the first real conversation from Lily since her father's passing. "Breakfast will be ready soon," Hannah said, turning back to her dough. "You're welcome to bring your brothers up to the house to eat before you start work." "That's very kind, but we've already had our trail rations," Adam replied, standing back to his full height. "Though I won't say no to that biscuit Miss Lily offered if there's one to spare." Hannah nodded, fighting an unexpected smile. "There will be." Adam finished his coffee and returned the mug to the table. "I'll go fetch the tools and materials we'll need for the roof. We noticed some spare lumber by the barn that might serve if you don't mind us using it." "Thomas had set it aside for the roof," Hannah confirmed. "Please, use whatever you need." With a tip of his hat to Lily and a respectful nod to Hannah, Adam stepped back out into the morning sunlight. Hannah watched through the window as he strode toward the creek where his brothers were breaking camp, his movements efficient and purposeful. "I like him, Mama," Lily said, climbing onto a chair at the table. "He smiles with his eyes like Papa did." Hannah turned to study her daughter, struck by the observation. It was true Adam's expressions reached his eyes in a way that reminded her of Thomas in their early days, before hardship and illness had worn him down. "Yes," she admitted softly, "I suppose he does." By midday, the sound of hammering from the roof had become a steady rhythm Hannah found oddly comforting as she went about her chores. All four Callaghan brothers worked efficiently, calling directions to each other, and occasionally breaking into snatches of song that drifted down to where she was hanging laundry. Lily had appointed herself water carrier, proudly bringing a bucket and dipper up to the men whenever Hannah allowed it. It warmed Hannah's heart to see her daughter engaged and animated after months of quiet withdrawal during Thomas's illness. "Your girl's a fine helper," Adam commented when he came down from the roof to check their progress from the ground. His shirt was damp with sweat, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms tanned by the sun. "Reminds me of my niece's same determined spirit." "She's taken a liking to you and your brothers," Hannah admitted, pinning a sheet to the line. "It's good to see her involved again." Adam's expression softened with understanding. Loss is hard on little ones. They feel it as deeply as we do but don't have the words for it. Hannah paused, surprised by his insight. "Yes, exactly. She hasn't wanted to do much of anything since Thomas passed. Barely speaks some days." "Children are resilient," Adam said, shielding his eyes to look back at the roof where his brothers continued working. "They take their cues from the adults around them. Seeing you carry on despite your grief probably gives her more strength than you know." The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught Hannah off guard. "I haven't had much choice but to carry on," she said, reaching for another sheet. "This land doesn't work itself." "No, but you could have given in to Willis and his ilk. Plenty would have." Adam picked up a clothespin she dropped and handed it to her, their fingers brushing briefly. "Takes courage to stay and fight." Hannah withdrew her hand quickly, unused to such contact after months of Thomas being too ill for even the simplest touch. "It's not courage so much as stubbornness. This land is all I have to give Lily. I won't let it go without a fight." Adam nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "Stubbornness serves its purpose out here. My ma always said a mule might be stubborn, but it knows where it's going." A reluctant smile tugged at Hannah's lips. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Adam agreed, his expression momentarily distant. "Lost her 3 winters back." "I'm sorry," Hannah said softly, recognizing the familiar shadow of grief. Adam acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod, then gestured back toward the roof. "We should have the worst of the leaks patched by sundown. Tomorrow we can tackle that garden fence if you'd like." "You don't need to do all that," Hannah protested. "You've already done more than our agreement called for." "We've nowhere pressing to be," Adam replied with a shrug. "And it seems to me that Willis fellow might think twice about bothering you if it appears you've got help around for a while." Hannah couldn't argue with his logic, though she felt uncomfortable accepting so much assistance. "At least let me pay you properly for your work." Adam shook his head. "We've got a few cattle left to sell in town when we're done here. That will see us through. Your cooking and a place to camp is payment enough." Before Hannah could insist further, a small cry of alarm from the direction of the chicken coop caught their attention. They both turned to see Lily backing away from something in the grass, her water bucket forgotten. Adam was moving before Hannah could gather her skirts, covering the distance to Lily in long strides. "What is it, Miss Lily?" he asked calmly, placing himself between the child and whatever had frightened her. "Snake," Lily whispered, pointing with a trembling finger. Hannah hurried after Adam, heart pounding, but he had already assessed the situation. With careful movements, he used a nearby stick to prod at the coiled rattlesnake, guiding it away from Lily and toward the open desert beyond the chicken coop. "There now," he said once the snake had slithered a safe distance away. "He's just going about his business and we'll go about ours." He turned to Lily, crouching to her level. "Are you all right, Miss Lily? That was a scary thing, but you did exactly right backing away slowly." Lily nodded, her eyes wide. "Papa showed me about snakes. He said never to run." "Your papa taught you well," Adam said seriously. "You're a brave girl." Hannah reached them, gathering Lily into her arms with shaking hands. "Thank you," she said to Adam over her daughter's head. "I didn't even see it from where I was standing." "Rattlers blend in," Adam said simply. "No harm done, though perhaps we should check around the house and outbuildings to make sure there aren't more nesting nearby." Lily looked up at Adam, her earlier fear already fading. "Can I help look?" "I'm good at spotting things." Adam glanced at Hannah, deferring to her judgment. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "You can help, but you stay right with Mr. Callaghan and do exactly as he says." Lily's face lit up with the important assignment. "I will, Mama, I promise." As Hannah watched Adam carefully inspect the area around the chicken coop, holding Lily's hand and pointing out safe places to step, she felt something shift inside her, a thawing of the frozen caution she'd maintained since Thomas's diagnosis months ago. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was the possibility of it, and that was startling enough. The next 3 days fell into an unexpected rhythm. The Callaghan brothers worked from sunrise to sunset, tackling not only the roof and garden fence, but also the sticky well pump, a broken wagon wheel, and countless other repairs that Hannah had been putting off since Thomas fell ill. Each evening, Hannah prepared supper for them all, and they ate together at the rough-hewn table outside, watching the spectacular Arizona sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. After the meal, Daniel, Matthew, and Jacob would return to their camp by the creek, while Adam often lingered, helping with the dishes or simply sitting on the porch steps, sometimes telling Lily stories of cattle drives and frontier adventures suitable for young ears. Hannah found herself looking forward to these quiet evenings, when Lily would eventually fall asleep against Adam's shoulder, and he would carefully carry her to bed before bidding Hannah good night. His respectful distance never wavered, yet something unspoken was growing between them, a companionable ease that Hannah hadn't experienced with anyone since Thomas's early days. On the 4th morning, Hannah woke to the sound of voices, not the good-natured banter of the Callaghan brothers, but harsh, demanding tones that sent her scrambling for her dress and rifle. By the time she reached the porch, Adam and his brothers were already positioned between her cabin and the unwelcome visitors, Jasper Willis and his sons, accompanied by 3 rough-looking men Hannah didn't recognize. "Mrs. Kinsley," Willis called out when he spotted her, "I see you've hired yourself some help. Didn't figure you for the type to keep company with drifters." Hannah stepped forward, rifle held firmly but not aimed. "The Callaghans are guests on my property, Mr. Willis. You are not. State your business and then leave." Willis's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just bringing you a final offer before things get difficult. $500 for the whole spread. Take it now, or I can't guarantee what might happen to this place or those in it." Adam's voice cut through the tension, deadly calm. "That sounds remarkably like a threat, Mr. Willis." "Just stating facts," Willis replied coldly. "This territory's changing. Law doesn't reach everywhere yet. Accidents happen to stubborn women who don't know when to accept a reasonable offer." Hannah felt cold fury replace her fear. "My husband paid $800 for this land 4 years ago, Mr. Willis, and we've improved it considerably since then. Your offer wasn't reasonable last week, and it isn't reasonable now." "You should listen to the lady," Adam said, his hand resting casually near his holster. "She's made her position clear." Willis spat into the dust. "This ain't your fight, Cowboy. You'll move on and she'll be alone again. When that happens, I'll be back and my offer won't be as generous." "Perhaps," Adam agreed mildly, "but today she's not alone. And it seems to me that 7 men making threats against 1 woman and a child is poor business even by frontier standards." Hannah realized with a start that he had included Willis's group in his count of 7, a subtle reminder that they were outnumbered. With the Callaghan brothers presenting a united front, Willis glared at Adam, clearly calculating his options. Finally, he jerked his head at his companions. "This ain't over," he warned Hannah. "Not by a long shot." As they rode away, Hannah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said to Adam and his brothers. "But he's right about one thing. Eventually, you'll move on and he'll be back." Adam turned to face her, his expression troubled. "Hannah, how long has Willis been pressuring you for this land?" "Since Thomas took ill last fall," she admitted. "At first it was just inquiries, then offers, then suggestions that I couldn't manage alone after Thomas passed." She swallowed hard. The threats began. Adam exchanged glances with his brothers. "There's something not right about his persistence. This is good land, but not exceptional. Why is he so determined to have it specifically?" Hannah shook her head. "I've wondered the same. Thomas always said the best feature of this property was its reliable water source, but there are other creeks in the area." Daniel, the oldest Callaghan brother, spoke up. "We heard talk in town last time we passed through, railroads planning a spur line through this territory. Been buying up land rights along the proposed route." Hannah's eyes widened. "You think Willis knows something about where that route will go? It would explain his determination," Adam agreed, "and why he's offering far less than the land will soon be worth." A flicker of hope sparked in Hannah's chest. If the railroad was coming, her property might be valuable enough to secure Lily's future, perhaps even send her to school back east someday, as Thomas had dreamed. "What do I do?" she asked, looking from one Callaghan to another. "I can't fight them indefinitely." Adam's gaze was steady, thoughtful. "You need allies, connections in town, people who would notice if something happened out here." "I don't have many friends," Hannah admitted. "Thomas was ill for so long, and before that, we were too busy establishing the homestead to socialize much." "Then perhaps it's time to change that," Adam suggested. "Tomorrow's Sunday. Why don't we all ride into town for church services? Let people see you, meet the new widow Kinsley and her daughter, make your presence known." Hannah hesitated. "I haven't been to town since before Thomas passed. I'm not sure I'm ready for the pitying looks and whispered condolences." "All the more reason to go now," Adam said gently. "With us accompanying you, you'll have a buffer. And the sooner you establish yourself as part of the community, the harder it will be for Willis to act against you without consequences." Lily, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped onto the porch. "Can we really go to town, Mama? I want to wear my Sunday dress." Hannah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then back at Adam's encouraging one. "Very well," she agreed finally. "We'll go to church tomorrow." The small church in Cedar Springs was packed when Hannah entered with Lily and the Callaghan brothers the next morning. Hannah felt painfully conspicuous in her black mourning dress, though she'd left off the heavy veil that would have marked her as a recent widow. Lily walked beside her proudly in her best dress, holding tightly to Hannah's hand. Adam and his brothers had cleaned up impressively for the occasion, their usual trail clothes replaced with simple but well-kept Sunday suits. Adam had even trimmed his beard, and his freshly cut hair curled slightly at his collar. Hannah found herself stealing glances at him, struck by how different he looked from the dusty cowboy who had ridden up to her homestead days ago. As expected, their entrance caused a stir of whispers and curious looks. Hannah kept her head high, though her grip on Lily's hand tightened. Adam stayed close beside her, a steady presence that made the scrutiny easier to bear. "Mrs. Kinsley," the preacher greeted her warmly after the service. "It's good to see you and Lily. We've been praying for you since Thomas's passing." "Thank you, Reverend Porter," Hannah replied. "It's been difficult, but we're managing." "And I see you've brought guests," the Reverend continued, looking to Adam and his brothers with friendly curiosity. "Adam Callaghan," Adam introduced himself, shaking the preacher's hand. "These are my brothers. We've been helping Mrs. Kinsley with some repairs around her homestead." "The Lord provides," Reverend Porter said approvingly. It's good to know you have assistance, Mrs. Kinsley. A woman alone faces many challenges in this territory. Before Hannah could respond, a striking woman in her 40s approached, her kind face framed by silver-streaked dark hair. Hannah Kinsley, I'm Margaret Cooper. My husband Robert is the doctor in town. I knew Thomas slightly, though not as well as I would have liked. Please accept my condolences. Hannah thanked her, touched by the genuine warmth in the woman's voice. And who is this lovely young lady? Margaret asked, smiling at Lily. My daughter, Lily, Hannah replied, gently encouraging Lily to curtsy as she taught her. What beautiful manners, Margaret praised. Mrs. Kinsley, several of us ladies gather on Wednesday afternoons for quilting and conversation. We would be honored if you would join us this week. And Lily is welcome too, of course. Hannah was momentarily speechless at the unexpected invitation. That's very kind, Mrs. Cooper, but the homestead requires constant attention, and town is quite a ride. I insist, Margaret said firmly. All work and no companionship makes for a heavy heart, and I happen to know my husband has been concerned about your isolation since Thomas's passing. Adam, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. My brothers and I would be happy to see to the homestead while Mrs. Kinsley attends your gathering. Perhaps I could drive her and Lily into town myself. Hannah shot him a surprised look, but his expression remained innocently helpful. Wonderful. Margaret exclaimed. Then it's settled. Wednesday at 2 o'clock at my home next to the doctor's office. As they made their way through the churchyard afterward, several other townspeople approached Hannah, offering condolences and welcoming words that seemed genuine rather than merely polite. Adam remained at her side, occasionally introducing himself but mostly letting Hannah navigate the social interactions at her own pace. That went better than I expected, Hannah admitted as they rode home, Lily dozing against her in the wagon while Adam handled the reins. His brothers rode alongside, giving them a measure of privacy in their conversation. People are often kinder than we expect, Adam replied, and you made quite an impression. I overheard several comments about your courage in carrying on alone. Hannah glanced at him. It was your idea to come today. Perhaps, he acknowledged with a slight smile, but you're the one who held her head high and faced everyone with dignity. That commands respect. A comfortable silence fell between them as the wagon rolled through the desert landscape, broken only by the creak of wheels and the rhythmic hoofbeats of the horses. Adam, Hannah said finally, why are you doing all this? You and your brothers could have moved on days ago. Adam kept his eyes on the trail ahead, his profile strong against the bright sky. Would you believe me if I said it felt like the right thing to do? Is that all? Hannah pressed gently. He glanced at her then, something unreadable in his blue eyes. Isn't that enough? Hannah didn't answer immediately, studying the man beside her. In less than a week, Adam Callaghan had become a fixture in their lives, bringing security, assistance, and an unexpected lightness to days that had been shrouded in grief and worry. I suppose it is, she said finally. For now. The smile that touched his lips then reached all the way to his eyes, crinkling the corners in that way that made her heart beat a little faster. For now, he agreed, turning his attention back to the trail. Hannah found herself looking forward to Wednesday with an anticipation that surprised her. It had been so long since she'd had female companionship or engaged in any activity not directly related to survival. The prospect of an afternoon of conversation and quilting seemed like an almost unimaginable luxury. Adam, true to his word, hitched up the wagon after the morning chores were complete and drove Hannah and Lily into town himself. He'd taken extra care with his appearance, Hannah noticed, though he wore his practical work clothes rather than his Sunday best. I'll collect you at 4 o'clock, he told her as he helped her down from the wagon in front of the Cooper residence. Unless you'd prefer to leave earlier, 4 should be fine, Hannah replied, adjusting her bonnet. She'd worn her second-best dress, saving the full morning attire for church. Are you sure you don't mind waiting in town all that time? Not at all, Adam assured her. I've some business at the mercantile, and my brothers asked me to inquire about cattle prices at the stockyard. Take your time and enjoy yourself." His genuine desire for her to have a pleasant afternoon touched Hannah deeply. "Thank you, Adam, for everything." He tipped his hat, his eyes warm. "My pleasure, Hannah." Margaret Cooper welcomed Hannah and Lily warmly, introducing them to the 5 other women gathered in her comfortable parlor. Hannah recognized some from church, including the mayor's wife and the schoolteacher, but others were new faces. "Ladies, this is Hannah Kinsley and her daughter Lily," Margaret announced. "Hannah's homestead is about 10 miles east near Cottonwood Creek. Thomas Kinsley's widow," asked an elegant older woman. "I remember when you first arrived in the territory, such a handsome couple with big dreams for that plot of land." Hannah nodded, a lump forming in her throat at the unexpected memory. "Yes, Thomas had grand plans. He worked so hard to make them reality." "And now you're carrying on alone," said the schoolteacher, Miss Abernathy, with admiration. "That takes remarkable courage." "I'm not entirely alone," Hannah replied, thinking of Adam and his brothers. "I've had some unexpected help recently." The women exchanged knowing glances that made Hannah blush slightly. "Those Callaghan brothers," said a plump woman introduced as Mrs. Peterson. "My Elmer says they are honest cattlemen. The oldest one, Daniel, sold them a fine steer last month." "They've been very kind," Hannah acknowledged, accepting a cup of tea from Margaret. "Helping with repairs around the homestead. Especially that handsome one with the blue eyes," Margaret commented with a sly smile. "Adam, isn't it? He seems particularly attentive." Hannah's blush deepened. "Mr. Callaghan has been a perfect gentleman, they all have." "Of course," Margaret agreed, though her eyes twinkled with gentle mischief. "Now let's show Hannah the quilt we're working on for the church fundraiser." As the afternoon progressed, Hannah found herself relaxing into the companionable atmosphere. Lily was content playing with Margaret's collection of cloth dolls in the corner, occasionally coming to show Hannah her favorites. The conversation flowed easily from quilting techniques to local news, and Hannah discovered that these women knew far more about the territory's happenings than she had imagined. "Is it true Jasper Willis has been pressuring you to sell your land?" Mrs. Peterson asked during a lull in the conversation. Hannah hesitated, unsure how much to share, but Margaret nodded encouragingly. "Yes," Hannah admitted. "He's been quite persistent since Thomas passed. His offers are insultingly low, and his manner has become increasingly threatening." The women exchanged troubled glances. "Willis has been buying up property all through that area," said the mayor's wife, Mrs. Thornton. "My husband says he's acquired 3 homesteads in the last 6 months alone." "We heard rumors about the railroad," Hannah ventured. "That there might be a spur line coming through." Miss Abernathy nodded vigorously. "More than rumors. My brother works for the territorial governor's office. The contracts are being finalized now, though the exact route hasn't been publicly announced." "And Willis somehow knows where that route will go," Margaret concluded. "The man has always had sources of information he shouldn't rightfully possess." Hannah set down her teacup, mind racing. "So my land could be worth 10 times what Willis is offering if it's on the planned route," Mrs. Thornton confirmed. "Especially with that reliable water source you have." The confirmation of Adam's suspicions sent a chill through Hannah. No wonder Willis had been so determined and increasingly threatening. "I won't sell," she said firmly. "That land is my daughter's future." Margaret reached over to squeeze her hand. "And you shouldn't have to, but Hannah, you must be careful. Willis isn't known for taking rejection well, and he has connections with some unsavory characters." "I've noticed," Hannah replied dryly, thinking of the rough men who had accompanied Willis on his last visit. "Perhaps you should consider hiring more permanent help," suggested Mrs. Peterson. "A foreman or ranch hand who could stay on the property when you come to town. Or a husband," added Mrs. Thornton with a meaningful smile. "A woman alone is vulnerable, regardless of how capable she might be." Hannah felt her cheeks warm again. "I've only been widowed a matter of weeks." I'm hardly in a position to consider remarriage." "Of course not, dear," Margaret soothed, shooting a reproving look at Mrs. Thornton. "But do consider the hired help at least. There are plenty of respectable men looking for steady work." As the gathering drew to a close, Margaret pulled Hannah aside. "My husband and I would be happy to ride out to check on you and Lily from time to time," she offered. "Robert has been meaning to see how you're faring anyway." "That's very kind," Hannah said, genuinely touched. "I would welcome the company. And perhaps you could join us for Sunday dinner next week. Nothing formal, just a simple meal after church." Hannah found herself agreeing readily, surprised by how much she had enjoyed the afternoon and how quickly these women had made her feel welcome. As promised, Adam was waiting with the wagon at 4 o'clock. Lily ran to him excitedly, holding up a small cloth doll Margaret had given her. "Look, Mr. Adam, Mrs. Cooper said I could keep her." Adam crouched down to admire the doll with appropriate enthusiasm. "She's a fine-looking lady," he declared seriously. "What will you call her?" Lily considered this important question. "Emma," she decided finally, "like your niece." A soft smile spread across Adam's face. "That's a fine choice, Miss Lily. I think my niece would be honored." He helped Hannah into the wagon with the same careful courtesy he always showed, but she noticed his hand lingered on hers a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Did you enjoy your afternoon?" he asked as they set off toward home. "Very much," Hannah replied, finding she truly meant it. The ladies were welcoming and quite informative. "Oh," Adam glanced at her curiously. "It seems your suspicions about the railroad were correct," Hannah explained, keeping her voice low so Lily wouldn't overhear. "According to Mrs. Thornton, whose husband is the mayor, contracts are being finalized now. Willis has been buying up properties all along the likely route." Adam's expression hardened. That explains his determination and his increasingly aggressive tactics. "The ladies suggested I consider hiring permanent help," Hannah added, "someone who could stay on the property even when I'm away." "A sensible suggestion," Adam agreed, his tone carefully neutral. "Do you have anyone in mind?" Hannah hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Actually, I was wondering if you and your brothers might consider staying on a while longer. For fair wages, of course," she added hastily. "At least until I can make more permanent arrangements." Adam was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "My brothers will be heading back to Texas soon," he said finally. "They have responsibilities, they're Daniel's family, the ranch, but I could stay." Hannah's heart skipped a beat at his words. "You would do that, if you're asking me to," Adam replied, finally looking at her directly. Something in his blue eyes made Hannah's breath catch. "I am," she said softly, "asking you to stay." The smile that spread across his face then was like sunrise breaking over the desert. "Then I accept, Mrs. Kinsley." The following weeks established a new rhythm to life on the homestead. True to Adam's word, his brothers departed for Texas after helping complete the most pressing repairs. But Adam remained, moving his few possessions into the small bunkhouse adjacent to the barn. Hannah paid him a fair wage from the modest savings Thomas had left, though Adam protested it was more than necessary given that she provided his meals and lodging. He worked from sunrise to sunset, tackling projects Thomas had planned but never completed, and some Hannah hadn't even considered. Under his care, the vegetable garden flourished, the chicken coop was reinforced against predators, and the small herd of cattle Thomas had started showed signs of potential growth. Adam even began breaking a spirited young mare that had been too much for Thomas to handle in his weakened state. Most evenings, Adam joined Hannah and Lily for supper, and afterward often sat on the porch with them, whittling small wooden animals for Lily or simply enjoying the spectacular desert sunset. These quiet moments became something Hannah looked forward to throughout her busy days. Lily blossomed in Adam's steady presence, following him around the property whenever Hannah allowed it, peppering him with questions about cattle, horses, and life on the trail. Adam answered each inquiry with patient seriousness, treating the child with a respect that warmed Hannah's heart. They attended church each Sunday, sometimes accepting Margaret Cooper's invitation to dinner afterward. Hannah continued joining the ladies' quilting circle on Wednesdays, finding unexpected friendship and support among the women of Cedar Springs. Through these connections, Hannah learned more about Adam Callaghan as well. The townspeople spoke highly of him and his brothers, describing them as honest cattlemen with a solid reputation throughout the territory. This external confirmation of Adam's character gradually eased the last of Hannah's reservations about having him on the property. Jasper Willis made no further appearances at the homestead, though Hannah occasionally spotted him or his sons watching from a distance when she traveled to town. Their silent observation was unsettling, but with Adam by her side, she felt protected from whatever Willis might be planning. As summer gave way to early autumn, Hannah realized with a start that Adam had been with them for nearly 3 months. The anniversary of Thomas's passing approached, bringing with it a renewed sense of grief, but also the recognition of how much had changed in that time. One evening, as they sat on the porch after Lily had gone to bed, Hannah found the courage to broach the subject that had been on her mind. "You've been here almost 3 months," she said softly, watching as Adam's skilled hands shaped a piece of pine into what would become a wooden horse for Lily's collection. "Has it been that long already?" Adam replied, glancing up from his work. "Time passes differently here, I think." "Differently than on the trail, you mean?" he nodded, setting aside his carving knife. "On the trail, you measure time by distance covered, cattle moved, obstacles overcome. Here—" he gestured toward the garden, the mended fences, the strengthened barn. "Here you can see the results of your labor taking root, growing. It's satisfying in a different way." Hannah studied his profile in the fading light. "Do you miss it? The trail, I mean, the freedom to go where you please?" Adam considered this question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But not as much as I expected to." He turned to look at her directly. "Truth is, Hannah, I've found something here I wasn't looking for." The intensity in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "And what's that? Purpose," he said simply. "A sense of building something that matters. Protecting what needs protecting." Hannah swallowed hard, wondering if he meant the homestead or something more. "The railroad surveyors were through last week while you were mending the north fence," she said, changing the subject slightly. "They confirmed what we suspected. The spur line will pass within a half-mile of our southern boundary." Adam nodded. "I saw their markers. Once that news becomes public, Willis will be more determined than ever." "Dr. Cooper says the announcement will come next month," Hannah confirmed. "After that, I expect Willis will either make one final offer or resort to more direct methods," Adam finished grimly. "We should be prepared for either possibility." The "we" in his statement warmed Hannah more than it should have. "Adam," she began hesitantly, "I can't expect you to stay indefinitely. You must have plans of your own, dreams beyond working as a hired hand on my small homestead." Adam set his whittling aside completely, turning to face her. "Is that what you think you are to me, an employer?" Hannah's heart raced at the softness in his voice. "I don't know what I am to you," she whispered honestly. Adam's hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Hannah remained still as his fingers gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Then perhaps I should make that clearer," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Hannah, I stayed because from the moment I saw you standing on this porch, rifle in hand, defending your home and your daughter with nothing but courage and determination, I knew you were someone extraordinary." Hannah's eyes widened at his words. "Adam, let me finish," he said gently. "I know it's been less than a year since you lost Thomas. I know your heart is still healing. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I would be honored to court you properly." Tears sprang to Hannah's eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Adam's smile was gentle, understanding. "You don't need to say anything now, just know that my feelings for you and Lily go far beyond obligation or employment. Whatever happens with Willis, with the railroad, with anything else, I'm here because I want to be here. With you." Hannah found herself unable to respond. Too many emotions tangling in her chest, grief for Thomas still fresh enough to ache, gratitude for Adam's steadfast presence, and something else. Something warm and hopeful that she wasn't quite ready to name. Adam seemed to understand her silence. He picked up his whittling again, giving her space to process his words without pressure for an immediate response. "The mare is coming along nicely," he said after a comfortable silence. "She'll be gentle enough for Lily to ride by spring, I think." Hannah seized gratefully on the change of subject. "Lily will be thrilled. She talks of nothing but horses lately, thanks to you." They continued in this vein until the light faded completely, speaking of everyday matters while the weight of Adam's declaration hung between them, not oppressive, but full of possibility. When Hannah finally rose to go inside, Adam stood as well, respecting the careful distance he always maintained. "Good night, Hannah," he said softly. "Good night, Adam," she replied, finding her voice at last. "And thank you for your honesty, for everything." His smile in the darkness was a tangible thing. Always. As October gave way to November, the anticipated announcement about the railroad finally came. The Cedar Springs Gazette published a detailed article about the planned spur line, complete with a rough map showing its route, a route that passed tantalizingly close to Hannah's property. The day after the announcement, Jasper Willis arrived at the homestead. This time he came alone, his manner less threatening than on previous visits. Hannah received him on the porch with Adam standing silently beside her. "Mrs. Kinsley," Willis greeted her with forced cordiality. "I expect you've seen the news about the railroad." "I have," Hannah replied evenly. "Though it's hardly news to you, is it, Mr. Willis?" Willis's thin smile acknowledged her point. "Information is valuable in business, Mrs. Kinsley. I've always believed in being well-informed." "What do you want, Willis?" Adam asked bluntly. Willis's gaze flickered to Adam, then back to Hannah. "I've come to make a final offer, $2,000 for your property. That's more than fair, given what you paid originally." Hannah had been prepared for this moment. "The railroad has already approached me directly, Mr. Willis. They're offering $3,000 just for access rights to the southern section. I've no reason to sell the entire property, especially not to you." Willis's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Kinsley. A woman alone, she's not alone," Adam interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. Willis's eyes narrowed as he studied Adam. "Hired hands come and go, Callaghan, we both know that." "I'm not going anywhere," Adam stated firmly. A tense silence stretched between them before Willis finally shrugged. "Have it your way, but don't say I didn't give you a chance to walk away clean." He turned his horse and rode off without further comment. "That was too easy," Hannah said worriedly, watching Willis disappear down the trail. Adam nodded grimly. "He's planning something, we need to be ready." They didn't have long to wait. 3 nights later, Hannah woke to the acrid smell of smoke and Adam's urgent voice calling her name. She scrambled from bed, rushing to Lily's room to find Adam already there, wrapping the drowsy child in a blanket. "The barn's on fire," he explained tersely. "Get Lily to the root cellar and stay there until I come for you." Hannah didn't waste time arguing. She gathered Lily into her arms and hurried to the trapdoor in the kitchen floor that led to the small underground storage space Thomas had dug during their first year. "Mama, I'm scared," Lily whimpered as Hannah settled her on the rough bench in the cool darkness. "It's going to be all right, sweetheart," Hannah assured her, though her own heart was racing. "Mr. Adam will take care of everything." From their underground shelter, Hannah could hear shouting and the crack of gunfire. She pulled Lily closer, praying silently for Adam's safety and cursing herself for not bringing her rifle. The minutes stretched endlessly, each moment a torment of uncertainty. Finally, the trapdoor opened, revealing Adam's soot-streaked face. "It's safe now," he told them, helping them out of the cellar. "The barn's lost, but we saved the house and most of the livestock." In the gray pre-dawn light, Hannah surveyed the damage. The barn was a smoldering ruin and part of the corral fence had burned as well. But the house stood untouched, and in the distance, she could see the cattle huddled in the far pasture, apparently unharmed. "Willis?" she asked quietly, mindful of Lily clinging to her skirts. "Him and 2 others," Adam confirmed grimly. "They started the fire as a distraction, then tried to drive off the cattle. I caught them in the act." Hannah noticed then that Adam's shirt was torn and bloodied at the shoulder. "You're hurt." "Just a graze," he dismissed. "Willis is worse off. I winged him before he and his men fled." "They'll be back," Hannah said, the reality of their situation sinking in. "With more men next time." Adam nodded soberly. "We need help. I'm riding into town to speak with the sheriff as soon as there's full light. You and Lily stay in the house with the doors barred until I return." True to his word, Adam departed for town as soon as the sun cleared the horizon. Hannah kept Lily inside, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite her churning anxiety. They baked bread, practiced reading lessons, and sorted through the winter clothes that would soon be needed as the desert nights grew colder. By mid-afternoon, Hannah heard the approach of multiple horses. She positioned herself at the window with her rifle, Lily safely tucked in the bedroom, until she recognized Adam at the head of the group. He wasn't alone. Sheriff Taylor rode beside him, along with Dr. Cooper, Mayor Thornton, and at least a dozen other men from town merchants, ranchers, and farmers Hannah recognized from church services. Hannah stepped onto the porch as they dismounted, relief and confusion mingling as she tried to understand why so many had come. "Mrs. Kinsley," Sheriff Taylor greeted her, removing his hat. "Callaghan here tells me you've had some trouble with Jasper Willis." "Yes, Sheriff," Hannah confirmed. "He and his men burned our barn last night and attempted to steal our cattle." The sheriff nodded grimly. "Willis has pushed too far this time. Arson and attempted rustling are hanging offenses in this territory." "We've sent riders to the neighboring ranches," Mayor Thornton added. "Willis won't find shelter there. My wife tells me he's been harassing you for months about selling this land." "That's right," Hannah acknowledged, still overwhelmed by the show of support. "The ladies of the quilting circle were most distressed to hear of your troubles," Dr. Cooper explained with a small smile. "Margaret insisted I ride out immediately to check on you and Lily and to tend to Adam's wound, which he neglected to mention was more than a scratch." Hannah shot Adam a reproving look, but he merely shrugged, wincing slightly at the movement. "The town council has voted to establish a regular patrol along this stretch of the territory," Mayor Thornton continued. "With the railroad coming, we can't have men like Willis taking the law into their own hands. Property rights must be respected. And in the meantime," Sheriff Taylor added, "these fine citizens have volunteered to help rebuild your barn before winter sets in." Hannah stared at the assembled men in disbelief. "You would do that, for us?" "That's what neighbors do, Mrs. Kinsley," one of the ranchers called out. "Besides, any man who'd set fire to a barn with a child sleeping nearby deserves to swing, and we aim to make sure Willis knows he's not welcome in these parts anymore." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes at this unexpected show of community support. "I don't know how to thank you all." "No thanks needed," the sheriff assured her. "Now, if you'll point us toward what's left of that barn, we'll assess the damage and make a plan. We brought supplies from town, and there's more coming tomorrow." As the men dispersed to examine the burned structure, Dr. Cooper insisted on checking Adam's wound properly. Hannah sent Lily to fetch clean water and bandages, grateful for the child's eager assistance. "You're fortunate," the doctor told Adam after examining the bullet graze. "Another inch to the left and we'd be having a very different conversation." Hannah paled at his words, the reality of how close she had come to losing Adam striking her with sudden clarity. "I'll be fine," Adam assured her, catching her expression. "Takes more than Willis's poor aim to keep me down, Doctor." Cooper cleaned and bandaged the wound, gave Adam stern instructions about rest and keeping the injury clean, then joined the other men to help plan the barn raising. Left alone with Adam for a moment, Hannah found herself unable to express the tumult of emotions his injury had stirred in her. You could have been killed, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam's expression softened. But I wasn't, and now we have half the town here ready to help rebuild. Why didn't you tell me how bad it was? She demanded, suddenly angry. You rode all the way to town with that wound. Because you had enough to worry about, Adam replied simply. And it truly isn't as serious as it looks. Hannah shook her head in exasperation. You stubborn, foolish man, a smile tugged at Adam's lips. I believe that's the first time you've called me foolish. I'm making progress. Despite herself, Hannah felt an answering smile forming. Don't make a habit of it. Of being foolish or of getting shot, he asked innocently. Either, she replied firmly. But the fear that had gripped her was loosening its hold in the face of his calm good humor. Their conversation was interrupted by Lily's return with the water and bandages, followed closely by Margaret Cooper, who had apparently arrived with a wagon full of food and additional supplies. Hannah, my dear, Margaret greeted her warmly. What a dreadful ordeal you've had. But don't worry, we'll have everything sorted in no time. The ladies have prepared enough food to feed an army, and the men are already marking out the new barn foundation. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. True to their word, the townspeople arrived in force each morning, the men working on the new barn while the women organized meals, tended to domestic matters, and fussed over Lily, who blossomed under the attention. Hannah found herself moved to tears repeatedly by the generosity of these neighbors, many of whom she had only recently come to know through church and the quilting circle. They brought not only labor and supplies but also small comforts, a jar of preserves, a hand-knitted shawl for the coming winter, books for Lily. Adam, despite Dr. Cooper's orders to rest, insisted on working alongside the other men as much as his injury allowed. Hannah often caught him watching her with a tender expression that made her heart race, but true to his word. He made no further declarations, giving her the time and space he had promised. By the end of the week, a new barn stood in place of the old one, larger, sturdier, and built with the collective skill of experienced ranchers and carpenters. The corral fences had been repaired, the chicken coop reinforced, and additional improvements made that Hannah hadn't even considered necessary. It's better than before, she marveled to Adam as they stood watching the last of the townspeople depart late Sunday afternoon. That's often how rebuilding works, he replied thoughtfully. You get a chance to improve on what was lost. Hannah glanced at him, wondering if he meant more than just the barn. Have you heard any news about Willis? Adam nodded grimly. Sheriff Taylor sent word this morning. They tracked him to a camp about 20 miles south. He was wounded worse than I thought. Infection had set in. He's being brought back to town to face charges, assuming he survives. I don't wish death on any man, Hannah said softly, but I can't pretend I'm sorry he's been caught. Nor should you be, Adam assured her. Willis made his choices. Now he'll face the consequences. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching Lily chase a butterfly near the new corral fence. The railroad representatives will be coming next week to finalize the access agreement, Hannah said finally. $3,000, just as they offered. Adam smiled. That's a substantial sum. You'll be able to make more improvements, perhaps hire additional help for the spring planting. Hannah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Actually, I've been thinking about what that money could mean for our future. Adam's eyebrows rose slightly at her use of our, but he remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Lily needs education beyond what I can provide, Hannah explained. And this land has potential far beyond what Thomas and I initially imagined. With the railroad coming, we could expand the cattle operation, perhaps add more crops for shipping. All good ideas, Adam agreed cautiously. Hannah turned to face him directly. But I can't do it alone, Adam, and I don't want to, his breath caught visibly. Hannah, you told me weeks ago that you would court me properly when I was ready, she continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I think I'm ready for that now. The smile that spread across Adam's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Are you certain? I don't want to rush you. Life is uncertain, Hannah replied simply. These past days have shown me that clearly. What I am certain of is that you have become essential to us. Not just for protection or practical help, but for the joy you've brought back into our lives. Adam took her hands in his touch gentle yet strong. I've loved you since that first evening when you stood on this porch ready to defend your home against whatever came. But watching you these past months, your strength, your kindness, your devotion to Lily has only deepened that feeling. Hannah felt tears welling in her eyes. I never expected to find love again after Thomas. Never thought I'd want to. But you've shown me that the heart has more capacity than I knew. Adam's eyes shone with emotion. Hannah Kinsley, if you'll allow me, I would like to court you properly, with the intention of asking for your hand when the time is right. I would like that very much, Hannah whispered. Adam lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then consider our courtship begun. Before either could say more, Lily came running toward them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Mama, Mr. Adam, look what I found. She held up a tiny wild flower, one of the last blooms before winter. Adam crouched down to her level, admiring the flower with appropriate enthusiasm. That's a special one, Miss Lily. What will you do with such a treasure? Lily considered this important question seriously. I want you to have it, Mr. Adam, for helping save our home from the bad men. Adam accepted the flower with solemn reverence. Thank you, Miss Lily. I shall treasure it always. Hannah watched them, her heart full to bursting with love for this child who had weathered so much, and for this man who had come into their lives when they needed him most. Winter in the Arizona territory brought crisp, clear days and frigid nights. The new barn kept the livestock warm and protected, while the snug cabin, with its well-stocked pantry and woodpile, sheltered Hannah, Lily, and frequently Adam, who joined them for most evening meals despite maintaining his residence in the bunkhouse. Their courtship progressed with the proper restraint their situation demanded. Adam was unfailingly respectful of Hannah's status as a recent widow, yet his devotion was evident in countless small gestures, a wildflower placed on her plate at breakfast, a particularly beautiful sunset he called her outside to witness, the patient hours he spent teaching Lily to read better and ride the gentle mare he had trained specifically for her. The railroad money allowed Hannah to hire 2 additional hands for the spring, reliable men recommended by the sheriff and vetted carefully by Adam. With this help, they expanded the cattle herd and prepared additional acreage for crops, investments that would secure the homestead's future prosperity. Jasper Willis survived his wound and infection only to face trial for arson, attempted rustling, and conspiracy. The evidence against him, including testimony from one of his own men who turned state's witness, was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison, effectively removing the threat he had posed to Hannah and her property. As winter gave way to spring and the first anniversary of Thomas's death approached, Hannah found herself reflecting on the profound changes a year had brought. Grief still visited her at times, especially when Lily did something that reminded her of Thomas. But the crushing weight of loss had gradually lifted, making space for new joy. One evening in early April, as Hannah and Adam sat on the porch watching Lily demonstrate her improving riding skills in the corral, Adam turned to her with unusual seriousness. Hannah, he began, reaching for her hand, it's been 6 months since I asked to court you. Has it been that long already? She asked softly, though she had marked each day in her heart. Adam nodded, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. I've tried to be patient, to give you all the time you need, but there's something I need to ask you and I can't wait any longer. Hannah's heart quickened as Adam slid from the porch bench to one knee before her, still holding her hand in his. Hannah Kinsley, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. This past year has shown me what truly matters in life. Not cattle or land or money, but love, the kind that builds something lasting, that faces challenges together, that grows stronger through hardship. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes as Adam continued. I love you with everything I am. I love your strength, your determination, your gentle heart. I love Lily as if she were my own, and if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my days showing you both just how much. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a simple gold band. Will you marry me, Hannah? Will you let me be a husband to you and a father to Lily? Hannah's vision blurred with tears as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Yes, she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, Adam, we would be honored to have you as part of our family. Adam slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to embrace her, his kiss gentle yet filled with promise. When they parted, Hannah saw Lily watching them from the corral, her eyes wide with curiosity. Lily, Hannah called, would you come here, sweetheart? Mr. Adam and I have something to tell you. Lily dismounted carefully as Adam had taught her and came running to the porch. What is it, Mama? Hannah and Adam exchanged glances, silently agreeing that Adam should be the one to explain. Adam crouched down to Lily's eye level, his expression serious yet gentle. Miss Lily, I've asked your mama a very important question. I've asked if she would marry me, which means I would come to live here with you both properly, and I would be your new papa if that's something you might like. Lily's eyes grew even wider. Would you still teach me to ride, and tell me stories, and help me with my reading, all of that and more, Adam promised. I would do everything a good papa should do, keep you safe, teach you what I know, and love you with all my heart. Lily studied him for a long moment, her young face solemn with the weight of the decision. Then, without warning, her expression transformed with a radiant smile that reached all the way to her eyes that, in that moment, reminded Hannah powerfully of Thomas's in their warmth and openness. I would like that very much, Lily declared with the simple certainty of childhood. She threw her arms around Adam's neck in an exuberant hug. Overwhelmed by the sight of his stepdaughter-to-be's joyful acceptance, Adam fell to his knees, gathering Lily close as emotion overcame him. He reached out one arm to include Hannah in their embrace, and she joined them, completing the circle. We're going to be a family, Lily announced happily, nestled between them. A real family again. Yes, sweetheart, Hannah whispered, meeting Adam's tear-filled eyes over their daughter's head. A real family. The church in Cedar Springs was filled to capacity on the bright June morning when Hannah Kinsley became Hannah Callaghan. Margaret Cooper had helped organize the celebration, and it seemed the entire town had turned out to witness the union of the determined widow and the honorable cowboy who had come to her aid in a moment of need, and found a love neither had been looking for. Lily, radiant in a new dress sewn by the ladies of the quilting circle, stood proudly beside her mother throughout the ceremony, her small hand clasped tightly in Hannah's. When Reverend Porter pronounced them husband and wife, Adam kissed Hannah with tender reverence before turning to Lily and formally offering her his hand. Miss Lily, he said solemnly, would you do me the honor of becoming my daughter as well as your mother's becoming my wife? Lily placed her small hand in his large one with perfect trust. Yes, sir, Mr. Adam, I mean, Papa. The word, spoken for the first time, brought fresh tears to Hannah's eyes, and a look of such profound joy to Adam's face that several women in the congregation dabbed at their own eyes with handkerchiefs. The celebration afterward was filled with music, laughter, and more food than even the hungry ranch hands could consume. Adam's brothers had returned from Texas for the occasion, bringing their families to meet Hannah and Lily. Daniel's daughter Emma and Lily became instant friends, comparing dolls and secrets while the adults visited. As the party continued into the evening, Adam found Hannah standing at the edge of the gathering, watching Lily dance with Dr. Cooper with a smile of maternal pride. Mrs. Callaghan, he said softly, coming to stand beside her. That has a fine sound to it. Hannah leaned into his side, savoring the solid warmth of him. Indeed it does, Mr. Callaghan. Are you happy? He asked, his arm slipping around her waist. Hannah looked up at him, at the face that had become as dear to her as her own reflection. Happier than I ever imagined possible again, she answered truthfully. You've given us so much, Adam. You've given me far more, he countered. A home, a family, purpose. He kissed her temple gently. And the greatest love I've ever known. As they stood together watching their family and friends celebrate their union, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, a journey that had begun in grief and fear, but had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. "What are you thinking about?" Adam asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "About how life surprises us," Hannah replied. "A year ago I couldn't imagine smiling again, let alone finding new love, and now look at us." Adam's gaze followed hers to where Lily was now attempting to teach Emma a clapping game, both girls laughing with the pure joy of childhood. "Life does have its unexpected blessings," he agreed. "Though I knew from the moment I saw you standing on that porch with your rifle that you were a woman worth knowing." Hannah laughed softly. "And I thought you were just another drifter who would bring more trouble than help." "Shows what you know," Adam teased, pulling her closer. "I'm the very model of helpfulness." "That you are," Hannah conceded, her voice growing serious. "You helped us rebuild more than just a barn, Adam. You helped us rebuild our lives." Before Adam could respond, Lily came running up to them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mama, Papa. Come dance with us." Adam's face lit up at being called Papa so naturally now. He bowed formally to Lily. "I would be honored, Miss Lily, but I believe I should have the first dance with your mother as is proper at a wedding." Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. "That's fair." "But I get the next dance." "Absolutely," Adam agreed, offering his arm to Hannah with exaggerated gallantry. "Mrs. Callaghan, may I have the honor of this dance?" Hannah placed her hand on his arm, feeling the strength beneath the fabric of his new suit. "You may, Mr. Callaghan." "This and every dance to come." As Adam led her to the center of the gathering, where other couples were already moving to the fiddle's lively tune, Hannah felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead would have its challenges, life in the territory always did, but they would face them together, as a family bound by choice as well as circumstance. Later that night, after they had returned to the homestead, and Lily had been tucked into bed with promises that everything would be the same in the morning, only better because they were now truly a family, Hannah and Adam stood on the porch of what was now their home, looking out at the stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Arizona sky. "I love you, Hannah Callaghan," Adam whispered, drawing her into his arms. "And I love you, Adam Callaghan," Hannah replied, her heart full to bursting. "Thank you for finding us when we needed you most." "I think," Adam said thoughtfully, "that perhaps we found each other. And in finding each other, we all found exactly what we needed." Hannah smiled up at him in the starlight. "A family." "A family," Adam agreed, sealing the word with a kiss as the desert night wrapped around them like a blessing. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Hannah stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching Adam teaching 7-year-old James, their son, how to groom a pony while 8-year-old Lily offered expert advice from her perch on the corral fence. The homestead had prospered beyond their expectations, the railroad spur line bringing new opportunities for shipping cattle and crops to distant markets. The additional hands they had hired lived in the enlarged bunkhouse, and a cook's cabin had been added near the main house. The vegetable garden had tripled in size, and a small orchard of apple and peach trees was beginning to establish itself with careful tending. Hannah's hand rested on her rounded belly, where their third child grew steadily larger. Adam insisted it would be another boy, while Lily was equally certain she would have a sister this time. Hannah was content to wait and see, grateful for the fullness of her life regardless of what the future held. "Mama," Lily called, noticing her watching. "Papa says we can ride to the creek after lunch if you're feeling up to coming along." "I'd like that," Hannah called back, smiling at the domestic tableau before her. Adam looked up then, catching her eye across the yard. Even after 2 years of marriage, that simple connection sent warmth spreading through her. He said something to James, ruffled the boy's dark hair affectionately, then made his way toward the porch while the children continued their pony grooming lesson. "How are you feeling?" he asked as he climbed the steps, his hand automatically reaching to cover hers on her belly. "Wonderful," Hannah replied honestly. "Though your son or daughter seems determined to practice riding skills before even being born." Adam laughed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Strong and spirited, just like their mama. And stubborn like their papa," Hannah added with a smile. Adam's expression softened as he gazed at her. "Do you know how beautiful you are? Standing here on our porch, carrying our child, with that look of contentment on your face, it takes my breath away." Hannah leaned into him, savoring his solid presence. "I am content, Adam, more than I ever dreamed possible." They stood together watching their children, surrounded by the homestead they had built into something remarkable through shared vision and hard work. The life they had created together wasn't without challenges, drought seasons, cattle illness, the normal conflicts of any marriage, but they faced each obstacle as partners, emerging stronger for the effort. "Do you ever wonder," Hannah asked softly, "what would have happened if you and your brothers hadn't ridden up to our homestead that day?" Adam considered this, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "Sometimes. But then I look at what we've built together, at our children, at you, and I know we would have found each other somehow. Some things are simply meant to be." Hannah smiled up at him, at the man who had come into her life as a stranger and become the center of her world. "I believe you're right, Adam Callaghan. Some things are indeed meant to be." As if in agreement, the baby kicked vigorously beneath their joined hands, drawing laughs from both parents. Life continued to unfold around them, children growing, crops ripening, seasons changing, but at the heart of it all was the love that had blossomed unexpectedly between a grieving widow and a wandering cowboy who had found in each other exactly what they hadn't known they were seeking: a home, a purpose, a family, and a love strong enough to build a future upon, one day at a time, beneath the vast Arizona sky.